Color theory. Ah, am I right? No, it's everything. It's everything. It's foundational. And the deeper you go, the further you can fall into it. And the more you can talk about and the more you can discover. But it shows the different parts of the hair that are really important to us as hairdressers. And we're dealing with it all the time with the condition of the hair, the color of the hair. There's just so many things to consider when it comes to these two parts of the hair shaft itself. So sometimes it's actually, if the hair strand is really, really ultra fine or they're naturally a blonde, you might not even have a medulla. So we're not worried about it. And it doesn't affect the way the hair feels or the hair color at all. So we're not going to talk about it. The rougher or the more coarse and the more built up or scaly, that's because it's actually like scales on the hair. The more that it's built up, the more you know that you have to break through that cuticle layer when dealing with permanent hair color. Or the more you want to soften it, or the more it needs conditioned, right, to seal it down. So we'll get to all of that. But that's what you need to know about the cuticle layer. You have two different types. You have a tubicolor and you have a peroxide, and you mix them together. So two different catalysts together that oxidizes and has a chemical reaction in the bowl and has a chemical reaction on that hair shaft and within the hair shaft. So vegetative hair color has demi-permanent and permanent hair colors included in them because the thing that they both have in common is that they both use a catalyst. And when it comes to the hair strand, they are on the outer layer, right, the cuticle layer, and in the cortex. So it can lighten the natural hair, so it can go into the cortex and diffuse the natural pigment, and it can deposit. It can go in and do that process called coupling, and they couple together and they attach themselves to the natural pigment. So a heavier dilute, which means more pigment within the cortex or on that cuticle, and it will deposit color and fill it up and make it appear darker. Now there's things like manic panic that will stain your hair, and just like it's hard to get stains out of clothes, it could be really hard to get stains off the cuticle layer of the hair. And that doesn't mean that there's not incredible things that kind of change the pH back to what natural hair is, or shampoos or conditioners and treatments and things like that. But it just means this is changing it permanently. So it's lifting the pigment, your natural melanin, through different stages of brightness, exposing pheomelanin, which is all of the warm tones. That's the thing that's going to really go in and help break apart the melanin, right, with the lightener when you mix it with different strengths of developer. So your 10, 20, 30, 40 volume developers is going to intensify the strength of the lightener. You can get hair really beautifully bright and light without making it completely hollow all at once and really destroying the cuticle layer. So if you have a level 1 being black, 10 being blonde, ultra blonde, the higher the number, like at a level 10, the more ammonia you're going to have and less pigment. So more heavy pigment, less ammonia in your darker colors, and a lot of ammonia in your lighter colors, your higher levels. It breaks up the melanin, so your natural melanin in the hair, the catalyst that you use, the 10 volume, 20 volume, 30 volume, that you mix into your color, that's what's actually breaking up the melanin, not the ammonia or the tube of color itself. It's breaking up your natural pigment. It's found in the developer, H2O2, and it increases in amount the stronger the volume. So I will increase my volume of developer with some of my lightening services, but typically when I'm doing a foliage service, I never have to go above 20 or an on-scalp application. So it has no pigment, but it's a molecule that combines with the H2O2 kind of like a pigment molecule would, but it makes the color permanent. So it kind of like beefs up or takes up space within that cortex so that all of those other color molecules that are in there combining with the H2O2 as well are taking up space so it doesn't escape. right? Green hair, we freak out, right? Or certain things can happen in the salon and it takes us, it's like we forget to just go right back to that color wheel and know what to make. So if I'm going to mix my yellow with my red, I get orange. Or if I mix my blue with my red, I get violet. If I need to neutralize red or green, I could use red. And then violet and yellow is what we're very familiar with, right? Everybody's using purple shampoo to get rid of the yellow in their hair. Or intensifying something that you want more ash or more red becomes easier as well, because then you're just doubling up on those pigments. So if I mixed equal parts of blue, my primary and my secondary color together, that's where you're gonna be in that tertiary property, that zone. This is, you need to memorize it right now. Take a screenshot, take a picture, go online, look up your color, like whatever color you use, their level system, their descriptions of the level system, their descriptions of underlying pigments, and then the counteractive tone or the complementary color, right? But the way that a level 6 reacts to bleach or lightener is, you know, from a level 6 and above, you can really lift and manipulate that hair in a lot of different ways very easily with the amount of natural pigment that is in the hair. Whereas a level 5 and below in the brown category, unless you're a natural level 8 or 9 and you're a natural blonde, you're never gonna lift red or orange because you're starting at gold and yellow, right? So no matter what, your hair has pheomelanin, and what is exposed at your natural level is always going to be red, orange, gold, or yellow. So then we go back to our primary and our secondary color wheel tones, and we start to talk about those. So if I mix a level 7, but I have extremely porous hair, say it's ultra fine hair, that level 7 that I mixed up is gonna look like a level 5. Or you need to mix in your tube of color something lighter, like a level 8 or even 9, and it could even appear like a level 6 on the hair. So if you're using a tube of color, that would be, you would definitely have to use at least your 30 to 40 volume. That's what manufacturers say, right? They maybe are living in this realm of a 5 and darker, and they want to be blonde. So they grab a level 10 ash blonde, they put it on their level 4 hair, and typically it's 20 to 30 volume that's gonna be in that box dye, right? So they're only really gonna get a few levels lighter, right? With that ash blonde, which if they're using a blonde, that means, and they're using a level 10, that means they have violet and barely any violet in there, in that formula, right? Because it's a level 10, so it's mostly ammonia. They've just got some brassy orange hair, which is actually the underlying pigment of a level 6 or 7. I think that for us, we know, well, it just didn't lift enough. And sometimes those major color corrections aren't that big of a deal. When you see somebody that has that like level 10 porous hair and then they've tried to touch it up themselves and they've got gold roots. So say they started at a level 6, they want to be a level 8, like neutral. Say they want to be a level 8 neutral and a highlighted, right? A highlighted effect in their hair. Like anywhere within that range where there's so much gray hair, am I gonna have to mix as much blue and violet in my formula? I can actually mix for that gray coverage and then add a little bit of my level 8 blue or violet in there to kind of counterbalance whatever pigment is left in that hair. This is what you mix when you wanna counteract these tones. But now you wanna put in more yellow, orange, red, orange. They're missing all of those colors. And now you have to intermix for that. And you have to replace all of that before you can even just get a neutral level 6, because then you'll end up with green hair. You need either more ammonia to soften and swell that cuticle. Maybe you need to increase your developer because that's what breaks apart the pigment in the hair. Maybe you have to actually really go intense with those pigments, or maybe their hair just lifts so easily that you could use a blue violet because they might get too ashy if they have a really fine level 4.